Alright guys, what is going on? Oink here, and in today's video I'm bringing back an old series of mine, GT5 Practice Centre, which is a video series in which I explain tips and tricks to improve your game across all different aspects of racing. As you can see in this video, I'm going to be covering some tips on how to follow in racing. Now this is when you're in close proximity to other drivers and you're just behind them. There's draft involved and there's going to be lots of cornering and braking when you're just behind another driver. So in this bit of gameplay, I'm racing with a fellow GTP racer, Hasselhoff, and I'm driving the Ford GT, and he is in the Aston Martin Vantage V8. And these guys are very equally matched, so in terms of overall track speed, we're pretty similar, and so it's going to be some close racing. And first of all, as you can see there, I give him just a slight nudge in the back as he comes in a bit slower than myself through Eau Rouge and up into the straight. And as you can see now, I'm in some pretty heavy draft. So I'll play it in full speed and then we'll go back and watch the same clip again in slow motion. As you can see here, we brake in, I come very close in behind his bumper and then accelerate out the other side of the turn. So let's watch this back in slow motion now. He starts braking just before the 100-meter board, you can see there as I stop it, and I brake at almost the same place, and this only works because there's about a 20 or 30 meter gap between us. Because of the draft, obviously, I'm in dirty air, my braking is a lot less strong than it would otherwise be, and we brake down into the corner. I just come up to his bumper. As the turn comes in, I allow the brakes off, that lets my car just turn into the corner, and then I accelerate out there behind him. So driving in very close proximity to another driver is not an easy thing to do, and the first tip that I'm going to give you is if A, you don't know the driver that well that you're driving with, and you don't know his driving style particularly well, B, if you don't know the car that he's driving well, or if it's got particularly different handling capabilities to the one you're driving yourself, or C, if the track that you're driving is not one that you're 100% confident with and you don't know the exact lines and braking points that you're going to take. In any of those situations, I would recommend leaving a good gap between other drivers to allow them space for error, to allow you space for error, and that way you're less likely to cause a collision when you're driving in close with someone. So in this next clip then, this is a very good example of a situation where I can stay close to him because I know the exact line and braking point and acceleration point that we're both going to be using as they're similarly matched cars. So as you can see, we brake into the corner again, I come very close to his bumper, we accelerate out the other side, it's a little S, again, take a similar line through the next part of the corner and then I accelerate close behind his bumper in the end. So watching this back in slow motion, you can see he brakes just before the sign, as do I again. There's a small gap and I catch up with that gap quite quickly, and at this point here it looks like I'm going to catch up too quickly before the corner and end up in the back of him. However, due to the fact that I know this corner and I know the kind of braking points and lines that we need to be taking, I know that you need to let off the brakes to allow your car to turn into the corner. So at this stage, instead of braking further, I actually allow the brakes off a little bit, and whilst that might look like I'm going to go into the back of him, he does the same, and so it actually allows us to both make the corner just fine as opposed to going into the back of him, and it allows me to turn into the corner and get a good run into the next corner. These next two corners are actually a good example of another problem that happens when you're following close behind another driver, and that's an effect called dirty air. So this is where the turbulence from the car in front actually affects the aerodynamics and the handling of the car behind. So whilst in a straight line that is increasing the speed, when you're in the corner that'll actually affect the handling of the car, and it will usually end up giving you some understeer or, you know, reduced handling capabilities. And so you actually have to adjust your normal lines and acceleration through the corner as to what you would do in clean air. So as you can see in these two corners, I just let off and just apply a little bit more brake and less acceleration on the exit to corners as I would normally, to avoid understeering and ending up wide on the corners. This kind of leads on to what I've just mentioned, one of the more obvious effects of driving close behind someone, which is the slipstreaming effect. So this of course reduces the drag on your car when behind somebody, which gives you better potential acceleration and top speed. Now this gives you perfect opportunities for overtaking on straights. However, I should say that when I do occasionally drive in online lobbies, people tend to just take any opportunity they can to make an overtake. If they've just got a slight bit more speed, they're going to just try and stick their car in next to yours and get past past you, and more times than not it basically causes one or other of the cars to get forced off the track and causes an incident, and that's really not a good habit to get into. You need to pick your acceleration, you need to pick your overtaking points carefully. Not every straight is a perfect place to overtake, as in this very example here, and you'll see what happens just in a moment here. So we're coming down the straight. I've got good speed, probably enough speed to get up, and I just let off a bit just before we come into the next part of the corner. If I slow that down, you can see I'm in the slipstream, I'm going much faster than him, I'm gaining time, but I know that there's another corner coming shortly up, and even though I could have enough speed to just get in, get my nose ahead of him, I know that that's going to put us both in an awkward position for the next corner, so I just let off a bit, then drop back behind him and dab the brakes so I'm ready for the next corner. And that's, that's why good knowledge of the tracks is necessary, so you know when is a good time to actually go for the overtake and when is a good time just to let off and stay in behind your opponent. As you can see here, I get in very close again under the braking and come in, and then Hasselhoff just lets me through, and he's going to have a go at chasing me now, and I'm going to take the lead on this one. So for this last tip I'm going to give you, this is almost the perfect way to do it, and this is from Hasselhoff's point of view. So you can see then this is the first corner after you've come off that long straight, and I'll explain exactly what he does. So he's in the slipstream here and he's gaining time on me. He's obviously going a lot quicker than me. He gets up to about 186 miles per hour and he's going a fair amount faster. Now he can see the entry to the corner coming up, so there he lets the gas off and he just coasts in the slipstream, so he doesn't lose too much speed, but he's going at this point about exactly the same speed as me. So that means that if he was in the lead, he would be going about this speed and he'd take his normal braking point. So from this point here, he might kind of brake roughly where he normally does, as he's not going as fast as he would if he had just carried on the gas in the slipstream. But because then of the dirty air, he's going to lose a little bit of braking power, so he's just going to keep the accelerator off just for a fraction of a second longer and drop just a little bit slower than what I'm going. And at that point, he can then basically use his normal braking marker as he would if he was in clean air, as he does when he's behind me, because he's going just that very slightly bit slower than I am, and he can stay tucked in just nicely behind him. You can see he overruns the apex just slightly, but it's almost a perfect corner, and it basically makes it just a very controlled and a very confident brake, and you never feel like that threat that you're ever going to run into the guy in front of you, and it really does just make you feel comfortable braking into the corner. If there's one final little tip I can give you, is that with some cars you can, if you think you're just about to brake a bit too late and it looks like you're about to run into the back of them, you can just dab the handbrake at the same time as braking, but just very slight little dabs of the handbrake. You don't want to slam it on, otherwise it will just lock the tyres up, and that can sometimes just help you to slow the car that little bit extra, but of course it does add that slight risk of locking the tyres up. But that about wraps up the video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've taken something from this, and it basically just takes some practice. Drive around in some lobbies, practice driving close behind people and getting your braking points down, and with a bit of practice, hopefully you can be confident driving, very close up behind guys. Anyway, like I said, hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you guys soon. Peace.